Hey, what's up? It's another episode of Film Streak. My name is Rob. I'm here talking about new films, but we've got another special episode. I want to share some more of the interviews that I did at the Houston Latino Film Festival this year. This was a really big event, and for me, even personally, it was a really meaningful experience. I got to meet even more people than I've met in the past, and I got to say, I've had some really great interactions and meetings and just kind of getting to know other stuff that people are working on in the local community, but also going back through these interviews and listening to them and just understanding the process that these people have gone through to make these films that they've shared with us and their perspective and their insights. And to really kind of live in that for a moment, it's just energizing. And so I hope that's something you take away from this. You know, I wrote something about a week after the festival. So it's on my Substack. I have a separate one that is not this podcast, and I'll include a link to that in the show notes. But I wrote something that tried to sum up my thoughts about the experience of being at this festival and connecting with people there, and not even like in a professional networking type of sense, but just getting familiar, just getting to know people and seeing that like there's people out there that are doing the things that I'm trying to do, that have ideas like I have, and maybe it turns into like collaboration or like working on each other's stuff, or maybe it's just like I'm just excited to see that. Like you telling me about your idea, it sounds cool. I get what you're doing. So I want to see what happens with it. I want to see you chase that and make it into something. To see somebody really move and get to a dream that they're trying to make a reality, I think that's always been a part of what I've done professionally, and even just as colleagues, or as even if you want to say with friends and everybody that's around me that does creative stuff. It's like I want to see them do it. So these interviews, I think there's a little bit of that in there. I hope that's something you take away from it. But so look, if you just listened to this, maybe you just found out about it from the festival or some other recent thing that we've talked about it. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for giving it a listen. And you know what? Let's just get to the interviews. We'll see you on the other side. I'm here with one of the directors of a feature film here, Colibri, and this is Francisco Salazar. How are you doing, Francisco?
Good, thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, we're excited to have you here. We're on day 2 of the festival. This is our opening film of the night. Maybe tell us a little bit about your involvement. I know you're one of the directors, of course, but this story, what about this story appealed to you?
I'm one of the directors. I'm also the producer and one of the writers. Well, this script came from a place that was inspired by one of my closest family members. It was based on a story that she told me, and I kind of found inspiration from her story, and that story started with a search and evolved into this relationship drama that continued to have that same search, those same elements of that search, but they evolved into what the film became, which was like, I guess, a romance drama with that same search of these two characters searching on their individual journeys.
Okay. And is there something about that, the approach of telling basically 2 parallel stories, right? Each character on their own sort of journey, but also on a journey together. How'd you find that in terms of building that vision for the film?
It's challenging.
Yeah?
It's very challenging because you have to balance both characters and make sure that both characters remain true to their stories, and that you give enough time to each of the characters so that those characters can both evolve, can be developed in the best way possible. So I think that's the biggest challenge.
You don't want it to necessarily become one character's
exactly.
film, right?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. Because the story came and became both of them, their stories. And that was kind of something that we were trying to do. When Dave, my brother, was editing it, that was something that I was very clear that we needed to make sure that we balanced the stories out. And he was also very much about balancing the stories out.
Okay.
So that was the biggest challenge.
Okay. Wow. Great. Yeah. What is it like? Is it a different kind of challenge working with a brother, working with a sibling, sharing a vision?
No,
No, okay.
not at all. Because my brother and I have been working together forever. I mean, we're one year apart.
Okay.
And we were first musicians in high school before we became filmmakers, and so we had already developed this idea of working together. What it was to be able to create we had a dynamic already basically formed, and this film, which is our second feature film, was basically an evolution of what our relationship was on our first film to this film.
That's interesting then. So you mentioned musicians or being involved in music, playing music or?
Yes, my brother and I'm a cellist, my brother's a violinist, so
Okay.
we played chamber music throughout high school. So we formed that bond of being able to play. And for chamber music, you need to be able to communicate. And without that communication, there's no chamber music, there's nothing.
Right. And so was that crucial to the element in the film of the music?
Well, we worked with a composer, Andres Soto, and we met him in college. So we know this. We've worked with him throughout college, and he worked on our first feature film. And actually, the song of the film is very important to the film because the song is introduced throughout the whole film. So we're basically giving the song away before the audience actually hears the song.
Right, right.
So
yeah.
it's all throughout. It's all interspersed.
That's one thing I picked up on. It's kind of a theme. It kind of recurs, right?
Yes.
And then it becomes like a really crucial part of the film.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's great, though. And so
Yes.
there was a big involvement in terms of the musicianship
Yes.
of it. Okay. Great.
Yes, and this is our composer. We've worked with him for so many years. We played our first score in our first feature film. This one we didn't touch. We wanted just to be able to hear, to listen, to be able to have as much. Just be able to work with him on a musical level without having to interfere, without playing or anything like that. So it was really important for us to be able to be there in the recording sessions, being able to see how he was mixing it. So yeah.
Okay. Well, great. So I mean, it does kind of work. It works with the film and the story, and it feels like almost another character in a way.
Yes.
So is there anything else about the journey that these characters take, this couple? Is there anything else there that's maybe something you identify with or have had experience with? It's sometimes a very kind of troubling time for a young couple to build a life together, right?
Well, I think most of the scenes of the film had some inspiration on one of our life experiences, something we heard, something we spoke to with, whether it was a family member, a cousin, or something. So there was something that we took out of most scenes come from somewhere.
Right.
And I think they draw inspiration from our own lives, whether it's within our own relationships or whether it's something that we saw within our own family.
I noticed that myself watching it. I think there's a lot of places for people to identify with based on moments that happen to the characters. They're very similar. They're universal, right? A lot of people can connect with some of those hard times you might have in a relationship and how you grow together. So it's great to see it in the film. Anything else you want to tell us about the film, maybe where people can find out more about it?
Sure. You can find out more about our film on our website, lacuartaproductions.com, or on Instagram, colibri_película. And you can find all the information about upcoming screenings and what else we're doing with the film.
Okay,
sure.
Great. I appreciate you being here at the festival. I look forward to seeing the film.
Yes.
We're excited to see you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Francisco. I'm here with one of the actors from our feature film tonight on day 2, Colibri. This is Eugenia Forteza. And tell us a little bit about your character and your part in this story of the film.
So I play Martina in Colibri. She's an Argentinian theater director, and she moved to Bogota, where the story takes place, to take an independent step into her career and take some distance from her family in Buenos Aires. We don't know exactly what happened there. You have to watch the movie. But Bogota is kind of a step in her career and freedom, finding freedom in her life. And so she built her own theater with the help of the lead, and it's that part of the story that takes place in a theater, and we learn about theater life and running a theater.
And so is that based on maybe some experience with theater or personal experience?
Well, I didn't write the script, but yes, I mean, we're all artists, so definitely the theme of, the hardships of having a career in
Right.
the arts, of being a writer, of working in theater, and having to be an entrepreneur and running a business. As artists, it's not always obvious to know how to run a business. So that duality of wanting to pursue your art but having to make it make sense financially. So I think that's a topic that we could all relate in the team, when we were working.
Okay, great. That struggle, right, for creativity and expression, but also being independent and still trying to build a life and build a relationship. So is there any element of that you may be connected to in terms of your character kind of being adjacent to it and witnessing it from the distance?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's something that every artist can relate to, and not just artists. I think our millennial, it's a very millennial movie, as in the struggles these people have to face and the realities of our generation, and how a certain pre-established path that used to work doesn't necessarily work for our generation anymore. So there is a level of, this is the struggle and the search that usually artists have to face. But I think most people can actually relate to the story of, having to achieve certain milestones in our careers, in our family life, decisions, where do we want to live?
All of those life pressures, right?
Exactly. So I actually think everyone can find something in this story to identify with.
Yeah, well, it's great, and we're glad to have you here at the festival. We look forward to seeing it. You're going to be part of the Q&A afterwards?
Yes.
Okay, well, great. Well, hopefully the audience, you'll get to see her on stage and ask her some questions.
Thank you so much. We are so happy to be here. It's my first time in Houston, so we just got off the plane, so I'm so excited.
Oh, great. Well, glad you're here.
Thank you so much.
So I'm here at the Houston Latino Film Festival with Juan Pedro David Salazar. He's here with the feature film. He's a director of Colibri. So, David, it's good to have you here. I just want to ask you a little bit about your approach to the film, directing this with your brother, and also kind of this story of the film.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So, as my brother probably in your conversation with you, obviously there was some very personal experiences that kind of inspired the story. And I think initially we were going down one direction of just a singular focused character. But I think as we developed the script, we kind of branched out and decided, well, what if we make it a story about a couple and their challenges and their discovery of like this big whirlwind change happening around them, and how each of them is confronted with. Because I think a lot of times in stories, it's so easy to focus on one character. I mean, that's what traditionally happens, right?
Sure.
But I think with a dual narrative story, our first movie also had two protagonists that shared the spotlight. But here, I think we decided very early on that if we're going to do two protagonists, we were going to ensure that each one of them had an individual struggle that they had to confront, so that we could also explore this idea that, when couples are about to have kids, for example, or just any change in general, each person has to deal with their own individual things, It's so easy to just think that they're a unit, but within that unit, every single person has personal struggles that they have to manage. So I think we really wanted to explore that in the film and how we approached it.
The idea of this kind of parallel lives in a way, even though they're together. But they drift apart and closer to each other, and there's that like push and pull. Yeah. I think it's illustrated very well, the way you cross-cut between the two stories. Is there anything that was particularly interesting? I know I've talked to Francisco, so he said you've worked on another film before.
Yes.
In terms of your dynamic and being able to share a vision, how has that worked out so far?
Well, this was interesting for a couple of reasons, right? So obviously, there's a second feature film together. We've directed a lot of shorts, obviously, together, always directing everything together, and we've developed this kind of teamwork and camaraderie, and we've grown and we've learned to kind of really establish a way of working, because obviously we don't always agree, and sometimes we have differences of opinion. What was really interesting in this one, especially, is because I edited the movie. And so my brother actually got to turn off my director brain in the editing process, and then he came in and took that role. And so we were able to kind of have that more traditional director-editor relationship, with me kind of assuming more of the editor role and taking the kind of putting the director hat in the back seat. So that actually allowed us another kind of dimension to our partnership.
So it's interesting. You have a really interesting approach there, and it seems to have worked. I mean, the film pays off because of the editing, I think.
Thank you.
There's a lot of dancing that you have to do with the stories and with the characters, so you don't lose the audience, or you don't weigh it too much towards one character or the other, right?
I mean, that was the big challenge, right? Finding that balance, because there were moments where you kind of sense that one character was taking over and the other one was taking a back seat, and kind of figuring out, okay, how do we manage to kind of maintain this dynamic, keep the interest in one story and then go to the other. And so, you know, for us, that was really the process. Finding the first cut was pretty straightforward. It was then finding that balance and fine-tuning that was really the bulk of the time we spent in the editing room.
Well, it's great. It's a great film.
Thank you.
Really excellent work in it.
Thank you.
So you'll be in the Q&A
Yes, we will.
in the screening?
Yes.
Okay, well, great. We're excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you for sitting down and talking to me for a few minutes.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here in this beautiful city and to be a part of this. Thank you so much.
I'm here at the Houston Latino Film Festival with the director of American Sons. This is Andrew James Gonzalez. And thank you for joining us today. First of all, how have you liked this festival so far, your experience here?
Oh, Robert, we loved it being here in Houston. It's such a culturally diverse epicenter of the world, and it's just great being here amongst all these museums and all this local culture, and just to be here and be present and be a part of this festival is just a dream for us, because we know we have a Latino film and we want to be able to showcase, with our people and, just see what everybody thinks about our projects. I know Latinos are very emotional, so I think it's going to be a great combination with our film.
So I want to ask you a little bit about the film. It's a very heavy subject, and it's a very important subject. And I think you've taken a really interesting approach with your film to telling this story. Can you tell us a little bit about the genesis of it, with this footage that you found and the sort of main subject of your documentary? Tell us a little bit how that came about.
Yeah, so our film revolves around a young Marine, Corporal J.V. Villarreal Jr., whom in 2010 was filming his entire experience in Afghanistan. And unfortunately, 2 weeks before he was supposed to come home, he stepped on an IED and was killed in action. His footage came home and came to his family. His sister brought it to my producer, Lara Varela, who previously had just finished a film, American Veteranos, as long as I can remember. And it was about Vietnam veterans who were using art to deal with their PTSD. So she had made a name for herself working with veterans, and April Villarreal Rodriguez, who is a sister to J.V. Villarreal, brought Lara the footage. And her and I had been working together over the course of the next 7 years. And at the end of that 7 years, I had felt confident enough to take on a feature film, which you do need to have confidence to do because it's not an easy feat to accomplish. And within 2 weeks of making that agreement, we were off having our first shoot. And that very first time we put the camera on, a very key moment occurs. That's actually the midpoint of the film. So we feel like this film was just meant to be, and producing it has just been incredible. I think that we're really going to be able to touch a lot of veterans and families and really be able to make some great change in this country.
That's something I want to ask you about, the process of connecting with these other people in JV's life.
His battery is what he was in.
Battery, okay.
The India battery is what they are.
Right. So what was that process like? Was it maybe more challenging than you thought, or was there sort of an inroad with the family, a connection there?
Absolutely, Robert. These men have such a strong commitment to each other. The brotherhood, the Marine brotherhood is real, and that's what our film shows. And they had such a commitment to JV as well as the Villarreal family. And so if it was something that was going to serve him, they were all for it. So the sister, April, she made that connection and let them know that something was going to be done with this footage. So in 2019, we went to Los Angeles, and all the men who were living in the area, we rented an Airbnb, and we kind of had a mini reunion for them. And so it was a chance to get to know them, let them to know what we were up to, what our intentions were. And really that was a development shoot. But as I said, the very first time we rolled footage, this incredibly emotional scene occurred. And so from that, we were able to start developing the story, start applying for grants, and moving forward. Everybody started to build a good relationship with us, but some people were reluctant, and that just kept showing up. You know, either I would show up to a reunion when other guys were in town, and once they got to know me, they began just opening up. I think it was an opportunity, maybe my demeanor, or I was willing to listen, or I was curious. At this point, you know, I was already very curious. I'd seen the footage, and I'd already experienced working with some of the guys, and we're just available. And that's really what I will say is being present, being available, being curious, open-minded, open-hearted. And really, we didn't have an intention on what the film was supposed to be. It was mostly research at first. And through the research, the project started to come together.
Because that comes across in the film. I think you really sense like these men are committed to each other and to their memories, to each other's memories and to their lives. There's a very powerful moment in the film where a couple of the men are talking to each other, and one is trying to kind of make sure he's staying, you know, on the straight path. It's very insightful in terms of understanding what veterans may be going through. Some may be able to cope and some may not be. And did you find that posed any kind of challenge to making the film?
Oh, of course. You know, when I got involved in this film, I really didn't know what I was getting into. And I think most filmmakers, when they're first starting, this is my first feature. So when they're first starting, you're just going and you think it's going to be like everything else you've ever done. You know, you're just pressing record, directing, talking to people, but such a heavy subject, something I wasn't really expecting. I knew it was going to be heavy, but we went deep. I spent time living with these guys for, you know, days, sometimes weeks. And like the gentleman that you're speaking of, we thought the movie was going to be about him, you know, because he was one of the first people we worked with. He's such an amazing personality, and we just fell in love with him. But as time went on, he began to fall off. And so that's part of just that journey that you're on, where you don't know what's going to happen and you just keep going. And so I know from the very beginning, I had wanted to do something really difficult. Since it was my first, I chose to do a verite style film. I wanted something that was hard so that when I was done, I'd be seasoned. And, you know, I don't know, I guess I could just say that I did it.
I mean, I'm sure it must have been a very eye-opening experience.
Absolutely, because
right?
you're just following the story. It's not like you have a script or you're asking questions. There's a bunch of talking heads. You don't know where it's going to go. You don't know what the ending's going to be. And it takes time. And we shot over between 100 and 150 hours of footage. I don't really know the exact number, but there's like 54 days of footage that I have. So some of them are 3 or 4 hours, you know, in the sequence. So it's a lot of footage, and you're just going and you're recording a lot. So there's a lot of footage of each guy. And putting it together, it was also a challenge, just sifting through all the stuff, all the different renditions that we had gone through. And, you know, the whole process was like almost 7 years.
Was it something that even revealed itself in the editing process of like, oh, the film wants to be a certain thing?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, documentaries,
okay.
You kind of do them in reverse. You know, you film and then you assemble later. You know, you have an idea of what it's going to be about. We know the main themes. We know veterans' themes after combat, PTSD, and TBI, and all these things. We know that is an issue that people are working to try to mitigate. But this is a human story, right? And that's what I'm after. I'm after the heart of the human condition, what people are going through, their interpersonal relationships. You know, it's not just combat and what happens after combat. It's how you're interacting with the people in your life because of where your headspace is. You know, what happened to you that morning, or something that happened, you know, 10 years ago that you're still thinking of, and the relationships you have with your wife or your sister, or your brother, or your child. And I want to know how those things are linked, you know, and what's causing that, what's the emotion behind it. And so when I'm engaging with these men, that's what I want to know. I want to know like where their heart lies, what they care about, and that's what you see on the screen. You know, these men, this is a love story, you know, and then that comes through very personal. And so although war is the backdrop, you know, deep down, it's a love story.
I want to ask you a little bit about where you chose to put the footage, especially the end.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's funny that you say that, Robert, is that the end, the very last shot, and the very first shot were always laid in. I mean, from day one, We knew that was the first shot, and we knew that was the last shot. And every sample we made, whether it was 5 minutes or 30 minutes, they always had first shot, last shot. Now, along the way, and there's a lot of other filmmakers who are going to get the same advice. They say, don't edit your own film. You're too close to the material, okay? Maybe that's true for some people. Doesn't work for me. Doesn't work for us, right? Me and my partner, Lara, we edit based on emotion, and we don't have a script. You know, we want to put together the main events, the main pieces, and then start to work within that. And we edit by feeling, by emotion. We don't do paper edits. We don't do any of that stuff.
Kind of go with instinct.
Exactly,
and go with
very
feeling.
instinctual. And once we got into South by Southwest, it was like 3 weeks of a mad dash to finish. It was unbelievable, 10, 14-hour days, and everybody was ready to go. We locked the picture. That took about a week, and then we did all the other post-production, and we're so happy with the way it turned out.
That must be pretty satisfying or rewarding, right?
Absolutely. It's super rewarding because it just gives you the confidence that you need, you know, because there's so much doubt that comes into your mind as an artist, you know, because you're working on minimal funds, you're doing something that's bigger than you, and you don't know if anybody's going to care because all you have is a piece of something. You don't even have a finished product, and you're trying to convince people of your idea all the time. And a lot of people, especially people that could potentially fund you, are saying like, oh, that sounds great. Let us know when it's done. And it's just like, you know, like we need help to get it done, you know? So when we were able to see that as first assembled piece and we loved it, we knew that we had something. We always knew we had something special. But when we saw the finished thing, we could see the pathway to completion.
You know, I've seen other films, of course, there's other documentaries about veterans and about PTSD and these sort of after effects that it has on people. But this one, there is something very specific about it. And I think that's a reason why it's really a highlight of this festival is your central subject, your figure here of JV and being a Latino personality. I mean, he's a man, of course, he's a young man, but there's something that I think a lot of people would identify. Like, I know this guy. I've met this guy at some point in my life, or it's immediately identifiable who this man is.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that, Robert, because what's great is when you see that opening scene, and before you see the person behind the camera, you hear the voice. And like you said, a Latino's going to recognize that voice, and they're going to say, hey, I know this kid. This is someone I went to high school with.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
And that really makes that connection for you. And then when you see him, and immediately you're pulled into that world of what he's going through, you know, the veterans just can come behind that and recognize everything that's going on. And, you know, it's just a story about humanity, you know, and it pulled me in. You know, we're from San Antonio, and he's from San Antonio. And so, I remember, you know, midway through, one of my producers was saying, like, you know, you need to talk to him. And I'd already lived with him for so many years, you know, like I knew everything about this guy. And during the hard times, I started talking to him, you know, hey, help us, man. This is your movie, because he's the first filmmaker. He created all the original footage, you know, and even in the film, he says, I'm the documentary filmmaker. I mean, he says it. So I started treating it with that respect, you know, hey, this is our project. Together, let's do this, man. Let's take this, you know. And I'm speaking to him, his spirit, his essence. He's living with me, and you know, we made this together. And I think he's proud. His brothers are proud, and you know, we're all going to go together, and we're going to make a difference. And it's a wonderful feeling to have that.
That's amazing, man. That's powerful. You saying that that you felt him with you making the film, and you honored that.
Yes,
I think you really did a great job in honoring his life, his memory, and everything that his memory lives for, you know, for these other men.
That's right.
And for the families, of course. Yeah.
This is a film with a bunch of Latinos in it, and, you know, that's a story that's not necessarily being told all the time in these war films, you know. It's like the men who are on the front line and the communities that they come from. And that's what the story that our film speaks to.
Yeah,
is
what's really going on. That are still here, right?
That's right. The families, the communities, who's really being affected by these wars, and like, what's it doing to those internal workings of the families? You know, the mothers who are grieving, and the brothers and the sisters, and all the men who survived. You know, that wish they could have taken the place of the ones who died. And it's just so strong. And we want not only for veterans to connect, you know, and say, hey, that's me, or I know that guy. Maybe I should call that guy. But also for the general public to understand what's really going on, that thank you for your service. What are you really thanking them for? Because what comes to mind is what you've seen in movies. Gunfire, explosions, the action stuff, right? But you don't see the aftermath. You don't see the turmoil that people are going through internally, and so we just want some more empathy from the general public, and then we want our leaders to do something to help these veterans, because the transition period is not as long as the training period. So these guys took 2 years to train to become Marines, 30 days to become civilians. And the 30-day training is not a training at all.
What have you seen in terms of the reaction from the veteran community or families of veterans? I'm sure it's been a very positive and a emotional reaction, but how have you gauged that so far?
Absolutely, super emotional. I mean, we like to look around in the screening and look at the people as they're watching the film. I mean, you can see body language shift, and people that really well, with their eyes are just completely red after the screening, and emotionally connected. Veterans, it can be challenging for them to watch because it's really close to home, but they appreciate it because it's telling their story, and they might not be able to speak what's going on in them internally, but they're happy to see that somebody is showing the public what they're going through, and perhaps they can get some more empathy towards them. But general audiences love it. Families love it. It makes you want to, love your children more. It makes you want to love your mother more. It has something for everything. You laugh, you cry. It has everything.
It does have a full range of emotions and feelings, and it's really powerful work, again.
Thank you.
We're glad you're here. We're glad you're here to check out the festival,
yes,
and with amazing film. We look forward to the screening tonight.
Yes, sir.
So, again, Andrew, thank you for sitting down with us for a little bit.
Thank you, brother.
We're here with one of the producers of one of our highlight feature films, documentary American Sons, with Elizabeth Avellan. Hi, Elizabeth. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
It's great to have you here at the festival. You just had your screening, and we talked about it just a second ago, but tell me a little bit about how your reception has been, not just to tonight, but overall with the film.
Well, we finally were able to finish the film right before, once we got into South by, we really made a push to be able to finish it, and we're able to get there. We were very close to doing it because Andrew Gonzalez has been working tirelessly on the edit and making sure the music was happening at the same time. So it was just getting to the decisions of the final things. So it played at South by. We had a beautiful world premiere, and it was really well received, as we knew and felt it would be, because it comes from a place from the heart and from wanting to help, and wanting people to relate to it in a very universal way. And I think we accomplished that.
Can you tell me a little bit about your sort of role in the film as a producer, but with working with Andrew and working with Laura?
Yeah. Laura and Andrew had been working together for a while on it, and they were at a moment. I met Andrew 2 years ago, exactly, during South by 2 years ago. And, I don't have a lot of time. I'm working on different productions and things like that all the time. And, he was telling me about his film. He was introduced to me by a dear friend, a woman named Hope Young. And he said, as we were walking, he goes, it's called American Sons. And I was walking down the stairs, and something just jolted me. Even the name jolted me. And I thought, I need to hear more about this. So we set up a dinner first, just to spend a little time talking about it and how he felt, what he was needing. Because it wasn't about me being a producer. It was just advice on how to handle, getting it finished, getting it done. And there was a little bit of things that needed to be, I have experience, I have wisdom on
looking
things
for
that
some
happen.
counsel.
Some counsel,
Okay.
And I'm more than willing to help filmmakers,
right.
With my experience and my ability to see beyond just the normal film, and I more for the heart, and I believe that we're making art, and our heart is part of that art, and so I hadn't seen the film, but he told me all about it, and it just sounded very special. So about 6 months later, Laura and they had a cut that they wanted to show me, and we went to Troublemaker Studios, to my studio, and we put it on the big screen so we could see it on the in our screening room, like it with sound, just to be able to see it, and it was really great. So they asked me to join them to start working, just with them to help them navigate it, and so that we also had a goal of getting to South by. And that was a year before. So the planning began, and to be able to continue if there was any more interviews, if let's shape the film to what it needs. And they were still pursuing grants, and they got some of those, and which was wonderful. And that's how we all started working together.
So as part of building momentum with the film, yeah?
Yes, and also supporting them from the bottom up, in the sense of like you're in the right path,
Yeah, kind of nurture it,
reassuring
yeah.
them, exactly. Because for me, that's really a producer supports the filmmakers, in the best way possible, so that they can get to a wonderful version of that film. And if you can contribute more, great. But in that, when I'm a producer, I can be many different things. For some places, sometimes it's just fairy godmother. And maybe that was part of it too. Just to sprinkle good fairy dust. Just they felt like me coming on, because they know I don't just do that for just anybody. They felt that there must be something special that gave them energy to continue and to finish it, because it was very special.
Okay.
What they had.
It's a wonderful thing to see a producer, someone who has either experience or just connections, or to help people who they have a vision and they have an idea and they have work, and they just need to kind of get it across the finish line sometimes, right?
And I just know that each one of them has a wonderful career ahead of them, in anything they undertake next. Lauda has certain projects, Andrew has other projects, and I'm excited to help them become, the best version of what they see themselves doing. So that's part of also being a producer in a project.
Right, of course. And so you mentioned Troublemaker Studios, and for anybody who knows films, if you pay attention to films, Troublemaker is a pretty sizable force, especially in Texas, right? For filmmakers, independent filmmakers. And so is there an element of this film that you feel like lends itself to that catalog of work?
Well, Troublemaker, we have prided ourselves in working a lot in pretty much every one of our films. There are Latinos in it. We have created careers, and that's a big one. And to me, this is part of continuing that. Where we're creating a wonderful documentary about a young man from San Antonio. Robert Rodriguez is from San Antonio. And San Antonio is very close to my heart, just like Houston is. They're beautiful cities, and each one has their own culture and their own things that they're great at, and sometimes, try to help them get better at, So, every city is like that. Austin is like that too, So for me, it was that, too. It was the fact that I am perfectly bilingual, and, Yolanda, JV's mom, speaks both Spanish and English perfectly. And also, the film, I just wanted to really enrich the situation and make sure that was a part of it that was so special, too, that it was Latinos. And even Billy Branch, his mother's Nicaraguan, the young man that goes, woohoo, and then he talks about the pack of wolves in the movie. He is Latino also, He's just Billy Branch, but Branchito, we call him Branchito. so there is a lot of that in the film, and I loved the themes, because it is important for us to take care of our people, all veterans, but I feel that a lot of times that machismo sometimes closes them off from wanting to speak up, and be seen, and that's a weakness. They don't want to look weak, And I think that this film shows how wonderful it is to open up and speak and get to that point.
That's a key thing for veterans, right?
One of the things is they can't unsee what they've seen. And at the same time, one of the most beautiful things was after we knew we were going to show it at South by. We wanted to make sure they saw the film without 250 people in the room. They needed to see the film and process. They had not seen it on the big screen in a darkened room with full sound, full music, full everything. And Andrew and Laura and I sat down and I said, I really think we ought to show them the movie A Trollmaker. And I felt because it's private and I had control over it, a time, whatever we needed, and it all worked out so beautiful because that idea became this other idea that it was right after the filmmakers luncheon that evening, so I was able to get them Franklin's Barbecue because that's who caters the filmmakers luncheon. So I ordered 30 more people for that evening, and they lovingly, were able to bring it, and I paid for it out of my heart because I wanted to give them some of the best of what Austin has. That's like and you don't have to stand in line for this. But the really interesting part of it all is that we're sitting there eating in the main room. We have all the posters, and about an hour before they arrived, I was sitting there with my friend. He's also a Latino who has been working for him for 18 years, and his name is Nixon Guerrero. And he manages our studio. And I said to Nixon, I said, I hadn't thought of this, but they're going to walk in here not knowing this is what they're going to come and see. And this is going to bring them so many childhood memories before anything of this that happened to them. Maybe it'll be a little bit of healing, and to see them like little children come in. And it was like, which was your favorite? Oh my God, remember da da da. And they were all talking over Franklin's, what had been their favorite when they were younger and then when they were teenagers. And, because all the posters are on the wall in this big executive suite. And that was really special for me because, even them, deserve to have the great memories before they served and remind them of their childhood beautiful memories, with Latino content, too. They saw themselves in those movies.
That's true.
So it's very cool,
That's something I talked to Andrew about when we sat and talked about the film, is that I think it's very easy to identify with JV, to identify with some of the men and their struggle, especially if you have veterans in your family or if you are a veteran.
Absolutely.
It's very, the way the film is built and crafted, it's very easy to find a way in and feel it in your heart.
And maybe approach them in a different way, and how you have been, because you don't want to talk about things and you don't want to stir them up, but at the same time, get them in private and let them talk, Just ask a couple of questions, They don't have to tell you if they don't want to say something.
There's something I imagine about the film itself and JV's story and his family must be very therapeutic, whether it's for other veterans or people who...
It's a universal thing, for a mother that has lost a child, for a daughter that has lost a brother, It's a very, for anybody who's a veteran or the parents of veterans around the world, this speaks to them, it's a very universal theme.
Very universal, yes, exactly. So it's really great to have the film here. How do you feel about your experience so far here with the festival? Have you heard of the festival?
Yes, I had heard about it. I just hadn't been able, I live in Austin, so I hadn't been able to, and I hadn't had a film here. But I love that you guys had Bob Trevino likes it because that was my favorite movie last year at South by. I saw it twice at South by.
Really?
I kept bringing friends, but anyway, so yeah, it's a beautiful thing to be here and to be able to present our film to Houston, and it had wonderful interactions with people, and I look forward to seeing it continue to grow and be a great festival that people can, bring films and do things, because there's so many of our wonderful films that have our people in it, and it's reassuring and strengthening to have festivals.
That's been a big part of the growth is over the last 9 years now.
Right.
It's not only films and the quality of films and the selection of films, but all the art, all the music.
Which is amazing. Yeah.
It's really becoming more of a cultural festival.
Absolutely, and Houston is the best place to have it, in my opinion, and to grow it. I really believe that. So, yeah, it's wonderful. It's been a beautiful thing.
Well, Elizabeth, we're grateful to have you here.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here with this such an amazing film, and so we look forward to maybe having you back.
Thank you for having us. So.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, I have more.
All right. Well, great. That sounds good.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. So that's some more of the interviews from this year's festival. Really appreciate all of those filmmakers sitting down to talk with me and share their thoughts about their work and their experience and their ideas. And I look forward to seeing more from them, of course. I look forward to maybe seeing them back at the festival with another film in the future. And speaking of people that were there at the festival, we had another artist that I got to interview, got to sit down and talk with for a little bit. Now, she wasn't a filmmaker, but she was there as part of the art exhibit that was at the festival, right? So it was a whole separate thing, just not films. There was music, there was art, there was poetry, there were panels and workshops. It was a full event. But one of the things was there was an art exhibit, and DJ Ariel, or Ariel Rodriguez, as her stage name and real name, whatever you prefer. She was very kind, very sweet, and very willing to sit down and talk with me for a few minutes about her art and the meaning of her art and how it ties into her DJ experience and how she blends the two. And so that's my reminder to myself to remind you that all of these interviews in this episode and the previous episode, they are available in maybe a little bit longer format. I've tried to kind of cut them down for this, but you can see the full video interviews on the Houston Latino Film Festival YouTube page, which I'll include a link to. So go check that out. Go subscribe. You'll see more stuff kind of coming through over the next, few months as we get those cleaned up and edited and put together. And we'll be dropping those over time just to give all the people that we talk to, give them their moment. So anyway, that's it for me for now. You can go to filmstreak.com if you want to find some other episodes. You can sign up to get them by email. You can subscribe with the podcast things, Apple Music or Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all that. Plus, I also have a list of all the films I've talked about on this podcast. These last couple episodes haven't talked about any new films. And if I'm honest, it's been a minute since I've watched some new films. So I'm going to get back into the routine, get back into the regular programming. But for now, you can go there and find everything that we're up to, which I think is coming up on 640, 650. I forget the count right now, but there's a lot of films, and you can find them, find out where to watch them, and just add them to your list, right? So anyway, that's it for now for me. I'm out. I'll check you later. You know what to do. Go watch something new.